What's up, everyone? John Brettinger from Techno Buffalo here. Apple's iPad mini event just wrapped up and they announced a ton of new stuff, not limited to the aforementioned iPad mini. Stick around, let me tell you all the stuff they showed us. So if you see me look down, it's because I got 3 pages of typed notes in front of me. They went through a ton of stuff. Let's go ahead and jump right in. First, Tim Cook took the stage to talk about the iPhone. He said that they sold 5 million in the opening weekend of the iPhone 5, the most of any phone ever, so that's a lot of stuff. And they showed a new iPhone 5 promo video. Still the same iPhone 5. Then they jumped to the iPods. New lineups already sold over 3 million units. iOS 6 has been the fastest upgrade path in history. 300 billion iMessages have been sold. That breaks down to about 28,000 per second. So that's a whole bunch of messages. 35 billion app downloads so far. Over 1.5 billion books in the bookstore and over 400 million downloads from the iBook store. So that's a lot of books. A lot of people have been reading 50 Shades of Grey. I know you have. You look super embarrassed right now. And they talked about a new version of iBooks. It's going to have continuous scrolling, so words will flick as you scroll, so you don't have to turn pages. You can just kind of keep flicking down like you're reading a really, really long website. You can share book quotes now with Facebook and Twitter, or share them via Facebook and Twitter. Over 40 new languages are supported. It's going to be available today for free, so yay! And then they got to the Mac, and there's a lot of stuff to talk about here with the Mac. It's been outgrowing the PC market for the past 6 years, so obviously have a long way to go before they even become even with PC market as a whole. But Apple now has #1 desktop in the US and #1 notebook in the US. And then Phil Schiller took the stage to announce some new stuff, as we'll see as a trend throughout the entire day. He's much better presenting new products, more exciting, I think, than Tim Cook. First, they got to the MacBook. And we've got a new 13-inch Retina display MacBook Pro. Not much of a surprise there. They unveiled the 15-inch MacBook Pro a few months back. This is its little brother. So what has this thing got in it? Well, first, it's 0.75 inches thin. That's 20% thinner than the previous generation MacBook Pro, which is still going to be available, by the way. 3.57 pounds, so certainly much lighter than the previous version. The Retina display has a resolution of 2560 by 1600. That makes it the second highest display of any laptop, second to the 15-inch Retina display. It's got a FaceTime HD camera built in there. The inside of it, they showed, to me it looked like an angry face, which I found kind of funny. It's got a pretty rockin' battery life in there, which is going to give you about 7 hours of battery life. Powering it, you're going to have a choice between an i5 or an i7 processor. Up to 768 gigabytes solid state drive, so lots of room for storage if you opt for the super expensive SSD options. It's going to start at $1699. It's going to be 2.5 gigahertz, 8 gigs of RAM, and 128 gig SSD. And it's only SSD on here. There's no spinny hard drive at all, and it's going to be shipping today. And again, older Mac Pros are still available, so if you want to get pre-ordering, now is a good time to do it. Run now, pause the video, go pre-order. And next, they talked about the Mac Mini. Hasn't been updated in a little while, but it got some love today. You can now go dual or quad band Ivy Bridge processors. 2.5 gigahertz i5, 4 gigs of RAM, 500 gigabytes is the opening configuration. And that's going to set you back $599, and that's available today, and you can up it with all kinds of cool stuff in there as well, but it goes up from $600. And then they got to the big daddy, the most important desktop they offer, the iMac. And I got a whole bunch of notes for the iMac because they went through a whole bunch of stuff. The new iMac got a complete redesign. It is now 5 millimeters thin on the edge, which is crazy thin. They use something called no friction welding. They actually merged the molecules of aluminum to make it crazy thin. No optical drive though, as we've seen with all the Retina products, so have to pick up an external optical drive if you need one. The resolution, it's not Retina, but it's 2 models, 21 and 27. 21's got a resolution of 1920 by 1080. 27 has a resolution of 2560 by 1440. The new screen's going to give you 75% less reflection, so that's good. It's 8 pounds lighter than the outgoing model, so you don't have to worry about picking it up. Not that it matters. You pick it up once, put it on your desk, and you're pretty much done. But it is 8 pounds lighter. NVIDIA's Kepler graphics on board. Support for up to 32 gigs of RAM. up to 768 gigabyte solid state drive. But that's not the only hard drive option here. Apple unveiled something new called Apple Fusion Drive. Essentially what it does is it merges a solid state and a spinny drive. It takes a 128 gig SSD drive and a 1 terabyte or 3 terabyte spinny drive, and it sort of combines them together. It'll put all the core operating system stuff on the solid state drive, and it'll learn the apps you use more and more and more. It'll put them on the solid state drive. So if you don't use, will eventually make their way over to the spinny drive. So if you use Final Cut, for example, that'll live there. If you don't use iMovie, then that'll go to the spinny drive, and it'll learn and adapt. So you should get the fastest options from an SSD, and also sort of the great storage that you get from a traditional spinny drive. So pretty cool, actually, what they've done. So the next thing they're going to do is talk about pricing. So it's going to start at $12.99 for the 21-inch, and it's going to be shipping in November. 27-inch going to start a few more bucks at $17.99. That's going to be shipping in December. So you're going to get a lot more in a thin package. Really curious to benchmark this guy and see how the Fusion Drive compares to a traditional SSD or a regular hard drive. Whether or not it's going to be worthwhile, or if you should consider spending the extra money for just that giant SSD. That is yet to be seen, but again, November and December, we'll have all the answers for you. The next thing we got to, not surprisingly, was the iPad, since we've been calling this the iPad mini event. And they didn't start with the iPad mini. They actually start with what they're calling, well, we'll get to that in a moment. Let's start with some iPad updates. 100 million iPads have been sold. More iPads sold in the June quarter than any PC maker of their entire PC line. iPad now accounts for 90% of web traffic from tablets, so a lot of Android tablets out there, but still 90% is coming from the iPad. Updates to iBooks Author in there, nothing overly exciting. If you write books, though, might be kind of cool to you. And then Phil Schiller came back, and that's where we get to all the good stuff with the iPad. So you know your pretty much brand new third generation iPad, the Retina display? It's not new anymore. We now have a fourth generation iPad. Not really called the iPad 4, but fourth generation, now 6 months later after the third generation iPad was unveiled. It's going to be powered by a new A6X processor. It's going to be double the performance of the A5X, double the graphics performance as well, and it's got next generation ISP for face recognition and image stabilization. It's going to give you the same battery life though, 10 hours of juice that you get out of the third generation iPad. FaceTime HD camera with 720p, that's the one you look at for all your video chatting needs. 2 times faster Wi-Fi with dual band Wi-Fi N, that's ABG and N. Of course, the new Lightning connector. New Lightning cables as well. You're going to have USB to SD for card reading and some HDMI cables as well. Available in black or white. And the same pricing point as the third generation is going to be starting at $499, so yay. We should also have a Sprint version coming, so it should be exciting to you Sprint folks out there, which will launch on their LTE network. All right, so we got much more. That wasn't the only iPad that was discussed. There's also a teeny tiny little iPad, which is called the iPad mini, which is nice. That's what I've been calling it for the past few months. Available in black or white as well. 7.9 inch screen. We've been hearing rumors of 7.85, so we're almost close. It's going to weigh 6.68 pounds. A screen resolution of 1024 by 768, which is the same resolution as the iPad 2 and the first generation iPad, which means all the games and all the apps are just going to work. If they worked on an iPad 2 and an iPad 1, they're going to work on this guy as well. So no need to do any letterboxing or stretching. All the applications will just work. Then they got pretty ballsy and they compared it a lot to the Nexus 7. Compared to the Nexus 7, it's got over 1/3 larger display area, thinner and lighter, 67% larger while surfing the web, which seems surprising, but they showed just the web area and it really sort of was able to see it. We don't have a Retina display though, but you do have a lot of screen real estate because of the higher resolution. So let's run through the specs. It's powered by an A5 chip, FaceTime HD camera, 5 megapixel iSight camera on the back, which will do 1080p video, LTE of course, dual band Wi-Fi, Lightning connector, 10-hour battery life, same as the 4th generation iPad. The slogan, every inch an iPad. You can already see the jokes happening. Smart covers will be available for it as well. It's going to start with 16 gigs of configuration. Pricing, yeah, not what we expected. $329 for the cheapest iPad mini. It's going to start at $459 for cellular data and go all the way up to $659 for the baller 64 gig with LTE. Pre-orders are going to start on Friday, October 26th, so this Friday, also the day that the Microsoft Surface comes out. But they're going to ship on November 2nd, and the cellular version is going to ship 2 weeks later. So much stuff was announced, so many good things. You can already hear the Saturday Night Live commercials saying, you know that new iPad I just bought? Outdated. We got a new one. The 4th generation iPad, outdated. We got a new one. I do give Apple credit for always pushing the envelope and trying to come up with something new and better than the last generation, but certainly it hurts the wallets of the consumer. Certainly folks that just bought a brand new iPad a few weeks ago may be a bit disappointed. What do you guys think? Are you excited about anything that was announced? The new iMacs look absolutely hot to me. I love the fact that there's a cheaper, upgraded Mac Mini to get into the Mac world. The iPad Mini looks to be pretty awesome as well. Really thin bezel, everything you love about the iPad, just smaller. And the 4th generation brings a lot of improved graphics performance. I think the iPad had a really nice edge for graphics performance-wise over the Android counterparts, and that just got even better. So really curious to get our hands on all these. And of course, we'll be reviewing the whole gamut of iPad lineups, let you know what we think. But I suppose importantly, I want to know what you think. So leave your comments down below and be sure to check out technobuffalo.com for the latest and greatest Apple news. I'm John Rettinger. I'll see you in the next video.